Rosh Chodesh, Nisan Sameach. Welcome, everyone. This is the beginning of the month of Nisan, or in the Bible, it's called Aviv. Before the Babylonian exile, it's called Aviv. This is the month of the Exodus. This is the month that Israel left Egypt. God brought them out with a strong arm and a strong hand and mighty power. He brought them out of Egypt, led them into the wilderness, gave them the Torah. This is the month that we get to celebrate Pesach, Passover, to commemorate that salvation. Today I want to go through a passage of Exodus with you because it's part of the Exodus story, and see if we can point out some things that are interesting. What I have here on the screen in front of you is Exodus 15. Exodus 15. Then Moses and the sons of Israel sang this song to the Lord and spoke, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. He has thrown the horse and his rider into the sea. אז ישיר משה ובני ישראל את השירה הזאת לאדוני, ויאמרו לאמור, אשירה לאדוני, כי גאו גאה סוס ורוכבו, רמה וים. Wow, what a great way to start a chapter. Hashem, the Lord, he is a man of war. Yod-He Vav-He is his name. He casts Pharaoh's chariots and his armies into the sea, and the choice ones of his officers are drowned in the sea of reeds. The depth covered them over, they drop like stones. Your hand, O Lord, is glorious in power. O Adonai, your right hand dashes enemies to pieces. In your majesty, in your majesty's greatness, you pull down those rising up against you, and you send forth your wrath. Wait a second. Did I miss a verse? Oh, I skipped over verse 2. Okay, my strength and my song is Adonai. And it happened, and he was a salvation to me. This is my God, and I will glorify him, the God of my father, and I will exalt him. Wait a minute. I just read through several verses where we're praising God for he's a man of war. He is there, Yod-He Vav-He, which means being. He is there. That is his name. He's taking down the horse and the chariot, and he's humbling the haughty. So what does that have to do with God being a song? Look at your translation. Does your translation have the word song? What does it mean, God is my song? Let's look over at the Hebrew and see if we can figure out what's going on here. Ozi, that's from Uz or Oz, has to do with strength and might. Ozi, my strength. Vizimrat, okay, I think that's the word in question there. Ya. Okay, Ya is the shortened form of Yod-He Vav-He, Ya. So maybe this should actually just be Yod-He. Vayehi li lishua. And he was to me for a Yeshua. Now, this right here is the same root that the name Yeshua comes from. Yeshua is salvation. So he was to me a salvation. Okay, so it looks like this word right here is the one in question. And the Vav at the beginning, that's just the word and. So really what we have is the word zimrat. Okay, let's look this word up. I did look this word up and got 3 different principal meanings for it. Let's see, I pulled it up right up there. Yeah. So this root, zayin mem resh, carries the basic idea of lightly touching. Okay, so in the Bible, it's used in three principal ways. It's the name, these three root letters are part of the Hebrew name of the animal, the gazelle, probably because it lightly touches the ground as it frolics. That's what the dictionaries say, maybe. Sounds reasonable. The second one has to do with pruning a plant, getting it ready for bearing much fruit. Well, that requires a certain delicate touch as well. Zamar, zayin mem resh, to prune trees or grapevines, fruit trees, bushes. But the third option is the most common. It has to do with instrumentation, music. And that's what we see here. My strength and my song. Ozi v'zimrat. Yeah, it has to do with, delicately touching an instrument. I'm a musician. I don't know if you are, but yeah, I get it. So lightly touching your instrument causes it to make beautiful music. So why is God being called a song here? That's my question. We have man of war, man of war, man of war. And in the middle, oh, and he's my song. Now I get it. A lot of us, we read the Bible and we get emotional, excited. We know how music can control our emotions or cause certain emotions to come to us. But just the context here doesn't seem to make sense. And in fact, there's something to be said about this. See, if you go over to the Septuagint, which was the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, you see something a little bit different. Let's see, let's look at the Greek English here. All right, so the word here, bonthos, is going to be a helper. And then this word is the one translated as a protector. He was to me a helper and protector for salvation. There's the word salvation, soterian or soterian. You may recognize this in English words like soteriology, the theology of salvation. Yeah, this is salvation. So this word here, skepastis, or however you want to pronounce it, skepastis. If you may wonder if it sounds a little bit like the English word skeptical. In fact, it's related. It has to do with seeing or being seen, something that is noticeable, just like a skeptic is someone who's incredulously looking on. He's spectating. Well, it's related to that, but the meaning of this word, though, is some kind of a covering. In fact, we see another word related to this in the New Testament where it's talking about clothes. A covering, clothing. So here, the Greek is saying that he is a help and a covering unto salvation. He is my covering unto salvation, which has to do with protecting. Okay, so what gives? Why is it that the Greek has one translation and the Hebrew has another? Okay, well, one possible solution to this problem is, how do I say this? Hebrew does not have 22 sounds. Or at least, let me reword this. Originally, as an ancient language, Hebrew did not have one sound for each of the Hebrew letters in the alphabet. It didn't have 22 sounds, it had about 29 sounds. And what happened is that Hebrew, whether Hebrews invented the alphabet or whether they borrowed it from someone like the Phoenicians, that can be debated all day, but whatever the case, some of the sounds, some of the consonantal sounds of ancient Hebrew were assigned to letters that were also assigned to other sounds. That means one letter has two, sometimes even three sounds. Now in English, you see this all the time. Just think of the letter C in English, right? I mean, this is probably the letter with the most possible pronunciations. You know, I've got the example of car, where it sounds like a K, or chair, where it has that ch sound, or ace, where it sounds like an S, and facial, which has the sh sound, or indict, where it's completely silent. So you can see in English that multiple sounds are assigned to this letter C depending on the word. Well, Hebrew's a little bit simpler than that, but still it had multiple sounds assigned to certain letters. And the one in question here is zayin. Zayin used to have more than one sound. The reason we know this is not just because of the translation of the Septuagint that kind of lets us know something's up here, but also because in other Semitic languages, Arabic namely, there is a different root that is, how do I say this, where the zayin actually has a the sound. The, as in the, that, those. And evidently in Hebrew, it got assigned to the letter zayin. So one root, zayin mem resh, has to do with touching lightly, but another Semitic root that would have originally been in Hebrew is zayin mem resh. Now, there's no letter zayin. I'm kind of making that up, but just to let you know that it was a zayin that represented a different consonantal sound. So instead of zimrat, it should actually be zimrat. Now, before you think that I'm going crazy here about letters having multiple pronunciations, think about the letter shin. In Hebrew, we say, oh, if there's a dot on the right side, we pronounce it sh. If there's a dot on the left side, we pronounce it s. That dot wasn't invented until the Middle Ages. Shin and sin had two different sounds for the same letter. Another example you could look to is chet. Apparently, chet had two different sounds historically. Maybe one was more a guttural chet, and one was a different, more like a chet or something like that. It's hard to know exactly. But if you look at transliterations of Hebrew names, specifically Noach and Rachel. Noach, of course, is Noah, the Noah and the flood. Rachel is Rachel. But interesting is that even though both of those names have a chet, and even though Greek has a ch sound, nevertheless, one of them is spelled with no ch sound in Greek, Noah, whereas the other is spelled with the ch sound, Rachel. It probably attests to the fact that this letter had multiple sounds. So what does this mean? It means that you can look in the Hebrew scripture at a word like zimrat, and you can say, oh, clearly it's zayin mem resh, that's the root. When in fact, it might be a different root because of an ancient pronunciation that's been lost. If this is the root jamar, well, what does it mean? Arabic preserves this root jamar. Okay, well, what does it mean? Well, in Arabic, this jamar is a root that has to do with protecting. So what that tells you is that even though it sounds really amazing to talk about how God is my song, Yah is my song. And I know a lot of musicians are going to be upset about this, but it's okay. I'm a musician too, but I'm also a student of the word. I want to know what the word says. I don't want to put what I want to say into the word, but rather what does the word say to me? I'm sorry, the word song isn't a good translation here. There are lots of other wonderful verses about singing to the Lord a new song and praising him in song and playing all these kinds of instruments, but this is not one of them. This passage is about God being the man of war that saves his people from the strongest army in the world at the time, the Egyptians. And incidentally, we do also see the joy that comes from this when Miriam is playing the tambourine and leading all the women and singing and dancing. Yeah, sure, absolutely. But this right here isn't song. Here, Moshe's song is glorifying God for his strength and protection and pulling the Hebrew people through this hardship, bringing them out of Egypt. There's another example of this whole z and zh sound for the letter zayin. If anybody is familiar with Aramaic, the word in Hebrew for gold is zahav. It's a good word to know. But in Aramaic, it's spelled with a dalet, dahav. Why? Probably for this same reason. That zayin there was probably zh. Jaha, it's either ja or the, probably the hav. And that the sound was preserved in Hebrew as a zayin, but it was preserved in Aramaic as a dalet, the hav. So there are 7 other sounds in Hebrew that are assigned to one of the 22 Hebrew letters, but had originally, historically, a different sound. So anytime you see 2 words that look like they're related, but have completely different meanings, it's probably because of those original consonantal sounds that Hebrew had, but then over time they got lost and they just got swallowed up into a single sound. Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this wasn't an overly linguistic or whatever, but it brings a new light to reading the Bible. You know, rather than just taking your translation at face value, dig in. See what it actually says, and you'll discover things like this. You know, Yah is my strength and my protector. Rosh Chodesh, everyone. Have a blessed month, and Shabbat Shalom. Leitraot.